Boo. Hello. How about we listen to some lo-fi today? I feel like that would be helpful. I haven't picked one out yet, so let me find one. This would work. Mm. Mm-hmm. I hope that's loud enough. Doo doo. Look at that, I actually did research for this. Can you imagine? How are you guys doing today? Mm. Who wants my attention? Oh, it's my own server. Okay, that's fine. Glad to hear it. So, I'm hoping the people who asked questions will actually show up. Or else they're gonna have to watch the VOD, probably. Wait. There we go. But the server picked a topic this week. And people wanted ethics, so here we are. I misspelled my notes. Ah, yes. I mean, it will be interesting because, of course, it's ethics, right? So, a lot of things in ethics and philosophy in general are pretty subjective. Your sound broke. Wait, what do you mean? Let me check if it's my end. I don't think it is, but I'll check for you. Wait, where did I put my Twitch? Oh yeah, I'm not logged in. Wait. There we go. Let's see if my sound is working. Seems like it's working. Oh wait, it's muted. Yeah, we're fine. See, this is why I keep my phone on hand, so I can check stuff like that. Alright. If there's anything I can do to help you fix it, I mean, I guess he can't hear me. Wait. I will type it in chat. Oh, you fixed it. Okay. Nice. Welcome back. Alright. So yeah. I was holding like talking and holding a whole monologue here, but I guess you couldn't hear me. That's unfortunate. Yeah, I was just saying basically, you know, when talking about ethics, stuff is subjective. At least part of it is. So that's why today I also wanted to, you know, tell people to join in to the discussion, I guess, because well, I can tell you the information, but then having a conclusion in ethics is mostly still your own opinion, right? So talking about ethics as in when it comes down to pet ownership, I have basic information and I can do the research, but in the end it also comes down to feelings and emotions. So we'll see. I mean, for people who don't know or maybe need a refresher, ethics is basically a philosophical way of thinking that is trying to determine what is fundamentally good and bad, right? So if we're asking, is it ethical? Then basically what we're asking, is it good for us as humans, for us as a species, for us as life on this planet? I mean, you can make it as big as you want. It's basically how should we live and how should we feel about certain ideas, right? It's obviously, it really depends on your morals. I'm going to snooze my ads. Go away. It depends on your morals, your culture, how you're brought up, you know. What's the difference with morals? So, a moral is an idea, right? If my moral is I don't know, let's think of one. Um I don't know, let's do a stupid one, right? Just to illustrate the point. I say my moral is that sleeping 12 hours or more is bad. That could be a moral, but that is just it. And when we talk about ethics, then we're going to use those morals to formulate an idea. So then I am going to explain to someone else why I think, based on my morals and values and my ideas, why I think sleeping for that long is bad. For the record, I don't think that's bad. It's just a stupid example. But then we're doing ethics, right? So then I'm going to justify or explain my ideas. Um, so I put like I found this online. I have for most of the things that I don't know, I'll have sources. If we come across things that we want to know during this stream, and I don't know, I'm going to do the research live. So I will go and find scientific evidence for whatever it is you guys want to know. I'll add those sources to the list as well. And then after the stream, if you're interested, just send me a DM or something, or just a ping in the podcast channel, and I'll send you the list of sources if you're interested in anything that we discussed today. Because your resource is only as good as your documentation, right? Right. Anyway, I found this picture and it's talking about animal ethics, right? So that's what we're going to do today. So I figured it was a good place to start. And it's basically what I was just saying. It's justifying how we think animals should be treated, how we feel about animals in general, and it includes all of those things that under the second point, right? So the rights of animals, which are usually based on the law of the country that you live in, and animal welfare, which you would think it's cut and dry, but it really isn't. But we can get into that. Animal law in general, cognition. Are there people who don't know what cognition is? Do I have to explain that term, or is that well known? I'm not a native English speaker, so I'm not always sure about which terms are common knowledge and which aren't. Wildlife conservation, of course, we're not going to get into that point today because we're talking about pets specifically. Um, you don't know what cognition is, okay? So cognition, how do I explain this? It's basically how mentally capable you are. Wait, maybe I can find a definition, an official one. It's probably gonna be better than my crappy explanation. Okay. The mental action or process of acquiring knowledge and understanding through thought, experience, and senses. I don't know if that helps you, but basically what that says is, if we're talking about animal cognition, we're talking about how able are they to perceive and experience the world, and how able are they to think about things, and that's when we're talking about animal ethics and we're getting into like, do animals know that they're alive? Do animals have the capacity to produce social bonds, stuff like that? That would fall under cognition. And those are very difficult topics, which I'm sure will come by during this stream. Especially the one, do animals know that they're alive, right? It's kind of an important point. Thank you. We'll see. I don't have that many pictures for this stream, like for other podcast topics that are more based on science and facts. I would probably have more diagrams and stuff to put up on screen for you guys, but since we're talking ethics, which is inherently very subjective and also not really tangible, right? It's just an idea. I don't have that many pictures. If something comes up, of course, I'll put it up on screen, but we'll see. I think I did find a nice picture of animals that we can put up, you know? We put a nice picture. Oh, it's big! Why is it that big? I disappeared. Oh, look, it's a dog. Why is it so big? Okay, it's fine. There we go. Pretty. That's what we're talking about today. We're talking about pets. Right. I'm gonna lock that actually. Stay there. Okay. So if we're talking about pets, right? Because I was doing the research for this podcast and I was like, what defines a pet? Because I'm Dutch. You guys all know this. So I'm European. Most of my viewers will probably European or American. But what defines a pet is different between countries. It's usually defined in the law. Sometimes it isn't. Sometimes the law just defines animals kept by humans or something like that. But if we're talking dogs, cats, most people on this planet will agree that they will be pets, right? But if we talk about a horse, for example, is that a pet or is it livestock? And if someone is keeping, I don't know, in America, some people are still keeping tigers. If you're keeping a tiger, is that then a pet or is it still a wild animal, right? So if you look for the definition of pet in itself, which I did, actually went and looked for the definition, and I got one from Britannica, so which is I'm pretty sure it's an English website. There they define pets as animals kept by humans as a source of companionship and pleasure. So you can think about whether that is true or not, because if you go by that definition, you could argue that any animal kept by humans is a pet, right? I could keep a fly in my home, and I could name it, like say I name this fly Boris, right? And I say, yes, having this fly in my home brings me companionship and pleasure, so it's my pet. And you wouldn't be wrong, you would be right. So for the purpose of this stream, where people ask me questions obviously about this topic that I will attempt to answer or at least discuss, I'm going to stick to the general definition of pets, however great that might be. So dogs, cats, birds, specific birds, rabbits, guinea pigs, rats, chinchillas, lizards, snakes, fish, right? Hey Nim, welcome in. And obviously you could argue about how correct that is, how inclusive that is, But I feel like for the direction that we're doing today, it would suffice. Right? And then I really wanted to touch on domesticated versus tamed. So domesticated versus tamed is sort of a discussion, and I looked online as well as in my own material that I got from my university, right? I couldn't find a general consensus of what exactly the terms mean. Most of the sources you will find say that a domesticated animal was in some way changed by humans in order to be easier to keep. And by that definition, there's 42 species of domesticated animals in this world, on this planet. What we used in school and what I use around my social circles and what I will also use for this stream, should I refer to it, is that domesticated animal is an animal that is kept by humans as pet or otherwise, that is just specifically for humans. And then a tame animal may be kept by humans and may be okay being around humans, but is inherently still wild. So if we're talking about my cockatiels, for example, they would be tame. Though you could discuss about whether Mist is domesticated, since of course she is pure white, which is not something that will happen in nature quite as often as we have made it happen as humans. There's still a chance it could happen, of course, but the chance is incredibly low. But going back to the tiger example, when we're talking about those tigers being kept in backyards in America, those would be tame and not domesticated. Does everyone follow? I hope so. Right. So that's terminology. Because terminology in ethics is super important. If we're going to talk about subjects that are subjective, then you need to explain what you're actually talking about. Kinda. I mean, if you have questions, just shoot, right? This is interactive. I'm not just going to talk to you guys for 3 hours, hopefully, and get no feedback. If you have questions, just go for it. We don't have slow mode on the chat, so... So 2 more things that I really quickly want to touch on before we get into the questions that were asked to me by my community. Obviously there's cultural differences, both in everything that we will discuss about and the eventual conclusions that you will draw. There's cultural differences. I'm Dutch. The fact that I am Dutch European is going to have a big impact on how I personally feel about these topics. So keep that in mind. Doesn't mean it's inherently right or wrong. It's just that it's colored by your upbringing, your culture, everything, right? Then last thing I still wanted to mention is facts versus feeling. So if there's things today that I will mention that are facts, I'll usually have sources for those. If you are unsure when I'm saying something, if it's fact or if it's an opinion or an emotional idea, please ask. Right? Because I wouldn't want you guys to think something is fact when it's just my opinion. So if you're unsure, please ask me. Alright. I feel like that's enough introduction. So I took your questions from the Discord and I compiled them into a little list Turns out we got 8 questions. And I'm going to tell you guys already right now that there's probably too much material here to get into in one stream. So I'm going to try and keep it as on point as possible, but it's a huge topic, right? So we're only going to scratch the surface. And again, if you enjoy this, just ask me for my sources list. Actually, I found a book online as well. Um, it was great. You can read it for free on Google Books, and it's called "Do Animals Want to Be Pets?" It's amazing. I have that source as well. So if you're interested in that, just let me know. I'll send it to you. So obviously the first question, question 1, and the biggest question of this stream is keeping pets ethical, right? That's the main topic. Um, and of course I have my own ideas about it. I have my own knowledge that I gathered from my education, but I also did some research. And what I found was basically what I already thought I would find, which is everybody has a different idea about it. Nobody agrees. Nobody agrees. There's whole books just dedicated to this specific topic. Everybody has a different conclusion. In fact, most books will have a conclusion that's somewhat ambiguous, right? They'll say, yeah, I think it's this, or we can't really draw a conclusion, or there's no hard evidence. So, short answer to the question, is keeping pets ethical at all? We don't know. We don't know. It depends on the person you ask. Of course, we're gonna do the long answer today, but that's the short answer. Right? I found one article that was arguing a difference between owning pets and keeping pets, saying that keeping a pet would be ethical and owning a pet would not be ethical. I found that distinction personally a bit difficult to make because owning a pet is usually a legal term, right? In a lot of countries, pets are your property, which means that you own them. But if you're keeping a pet and not saying that you own them, the pet still does not get a say, right? They don't get a say if they want to live with you. So, isn't that similar? Like, I thought personally, for me, it was very similar. And I thought the idea of saying owning a pet is not ethical, but keeping them is, I got kind of confused. I don't know how any of you feel about it. Maybe it's a like an emotional difference. Yeah, if there is a difference, it's really small. I agree. But she says owning something that has its own feelings and its own life is always morally and ethically wrong, right? And yes, I'm sorry. I don't know how to turn them off. Mm. Anyway. So let's get into some variables, right? About this whole topic. Because keeping a pet is not like a clear-cut case. Not every pet and not every owner are the same, even if they're the same species, same breed. There is small subtle differences that you would take into account when talking about stuff like this, right? You might be onto something there, Nim, actually. You might be onto something. But then again, even your spouse can still choose to, decide to move in with you. When I buy a bird, The bird does not decide that, like, hey, this is great. I want to move in with this new person. They don't decide that. So, in that regard, I feel like the difference is even smaller than your example suggests. Yeah. But anyways, variables, right? So, for example, I'm going to give you just a simple example, and you tell me what you feel like if it's ethical or not. So, say a bird hit my window, and it is hurt, and I pick it up and I take it inside my home and I, you know, help it out and heal it up, give it food and water until it's healthy again, and then they release the bird. But the bird comes back out of its own free will and then decides to hang out with me as I like hang out in the garden and in and out of the house. Is that a different scenario? Because by the definition of pets, like the official definition where there are companions, um, kept for companionship and, general happiness, it would be a pet, right? But is that more ethically permissible than buying a pet? Yeah, exactly, because that's what we're talking about, right, Nim? It's choice. Does choice matter in this discussion in general? Hmm. And to me personally, it does. Like, to me, the choice thing matters. Um, but you can argue about it, right? Do animals even have the mental capacity to make that decision? Do they understand the consequences of a decision like that? We don't know that. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I mean, Nim. Like, when we're talking about choice, what do we mean by choice in itself? Since the bird wanted to, yeah. But we can't ask the bird if he wants to, and we're still taking a wild animal out of the wild to make it a pet. Is that okay? Right? So that's what I mean when I'm saying like there's different variables to consider in every case, because not every animal is the same, and not every owner is the same, and every situation is different, right? So if we come to the conclusion today that hey, keeping pets is ethical, or it's not ethical, or it's ethical under certain conditions, then that still might not apply to everyone. In fact, I think we can be pretty sure that it doesn't. Right? And that kind of so Passion asked an interesting question, and I don't know how much of this we can discuss on Twitch, but we'll see. His question was, well, he asked a bunch of questions. Uh, um, uh, this question was, since we service the pets, clean them, feed them, and pet them, aren't we the inferior person? So he's arguing because we like take care of all of our pets' needs. They're actually superior to us in this discussion of whether it's ethical to keep an animal in your home. And I think it could be a very polarizing question, because then if you say that he's right, then that has certain consequences. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what I was getting at, Nim. Like, I think in general it kind of comes back to that definition, right? What is inferior, what is superior in general. But I don't think it's more ethical for us to keep a pet by saying that we are in the inferior one, so it's fine, right? So that was sort of a smaller question. But I feel like for this specific discussion, the answer would be no, we're not inferior to our pets. Plus, I am wondering if it even matters what in like deciding whether or not something is ethical. Um, then we have two questions that were almost the same, so I'm going to put them like together. Um, both of them were asked by Sky, and she's asking what should be the legal age to own a pet, and should kids be allowed near pets at all? And this is where we are going to get into the details. So I don't know if you guys have any ideas about this question. Obviously, I have mine. Uh, well, for my ideas, I like to base all of my ideas on the knowledge that I have, and of course, the knowledge that you have as a person is limited. But you know, coming from university and everything, that's something I take into account. It is a very difficult question. You are right. So, what we have to think about first when it comes to children and pets, right, is when is it not right to own a pet? And we all know this. It's even in the law. For example, if there is neglect, that is not right. If there is any of the other things that are illegal, not right. Right? And then there is also things that might not be illegal but are still not right. For example, if you keep a bird in a very small cage, technically not illegal, but I also would argue that it's not right. Then when like looking at the question of the children, can a children or a child, sorry, provide the care needed for that specific animal? And how do we even judge that? Because my initial thought was when I read the question, obviously, if you read a question, you get an initial thought. My initial thought was, well, it would be nice to have an age limit on some pets, because some pets are really hard to take care of. And obviously, my mind was going to animals like snakes, specific types of fish that need very specific water conditions, uh, maybe even a dog that needs a lot of exercise, right? Those are the animals that my mind instantly went to. But then I started thinking about it more, saying, like, okay, so then what pet in that reasoning would be child friendly? And I can't think of one. I genuinely can't think of a pet that would be child friendly. When you ask the internet, starter pets, right? I hate the term, but hey, let's go there. If you ask the internet, they'll tell you goldfish. They'll tell you bunny, right? You guys know this. So, do I agree with that from a vet student's perspective? No. Goldfish have an incredible lifespan and they can become really big and they need quite specialized care. We just don't provide it to them and they survive for a couple years and then they die and we buy a new one. I don't think that's right, personally. But that's why they're considered starter pets, because basically it's hard for them to die, which I don't think should be the thing that we're gonna go by. Because if an animal's surviving, that doesn't mean that it's thriving. A fish in a bowl is not thriving. And it's probably pretty easy to take care of. You just throw some food in there and you look at it, and now, it's alive. But that doesn't make it right. You guys understand what I'm getting at here? Yes, exactly. It's same for rodents. So then, after I had processed my initial thought and went through this whole consideration, I was like, okay, so then there's actually no animal that I would consider child friendly, from my own opinion, right? Um, then is having an age limit on owning a pet a good idea? I mean, probably, but it poses more difficulties. Because, for one, where are you gonna put the limit? And secondly, how are you gonna enforce the limit? Because if a parent buys a child a pet, then they still own a pet. And parents are already, by law, responsible for the pets in their home, right? Yes, that's another consideration, Nim. Like, if there is, say we set the limits or at 16. I don't know, I'm just saying something, it's arbitrary, right? Then I'm sure there's 12-year-olds that will be better pet owners than their 17-year-olds. Of course. So it's just not a feasible rule. So the question, it's a great question. I really think it's a really good question. The problem with the question is that, the answer doesn't matter because we can't do anything about it. Whether the answer to the question is yes or no, it does not matter. Pet license. I had a discussion with a friend about pet licenses this week. I'm in favor, but let's just say it's very deep, broad discussion that you can talk about for 4 hours with all the positives, negatives, difficulties, implementation, finances. Short answer, yeah, I think it's a good idea to have people test their knowledge and, make sure they do the research before they buy an animal. Obviously. Is it a possibility? That's a whole different topic. And I actually wanted to take the question that Sky asked me about the children, and I wanted to make it a little broader, and I wanted to tell you guys a story of something that I have seen in the clinic, because obviously, as a vet student, you also spend time in the clinic. And I'm under confidentiality, of course, for personal information, but I can still tell you a little story about something that happened to me. So I was in this clinic and I was doing vaccination consultations. It's great. Every vet student does this. You go to the clinic and you do vaccination consultations, which basically means you're going to get an owner in your room with a pet or 2 or 3 that need vaccinations and are otherwise healthy. Yes? It's pretty easy procedure. You say hi, you do a general health check on the animal. If they're healthy, you give the vaccination. If they're a dog, you write it in their passport, and then they go home. Quite straightforward. And during one of those times that I was doing vaccinations, I met a lady, and she left an impression on me. and I'm going to share her story with you guys. So this lady had a dog, and the dog was a border collie. And for those of you who don't know, a border collie is a huge. It needs a lot of exercise. It's hugely active. It needs. I think the minimum that we set now is 2 hours of intense exercise in a day. I'm pretty sure. I'd have to look it up to be 100% sure, but I'm like 8% sure. But we advise more. They're also incredibly intelligent. Really intelligent animals, and they really want to work for you. They're highly trainable. They love doing agility, stuff like that. And that was the breed that this lady had. And she came into well, my room, and we had the general pleasantries. I did the examination. Dog was completely healthy. I vaccinated the dog, and she started talking to me about her pet and about her, well, life, I would say. This happens a lot. I don't know if you guys know, but this happens a lot in a vet clinic where people just need to talk about their animal for a little bit. And it makes them happy to discuss things that have happened. I can't probably even count on one hand the times that owners have come up to me and shown me pictures of their pets when they were babies or doing something interesting. It happens a lot. So she started talking about her pet. And one of the things that you need to know about this lady, she was amazing, but she was in an accident a while ago, and now she was in a wheelchair. And she told me, as I was standing there, like examining the dog, that she was going to actually give up her pet. She's had it for, I believe, 4.5 years. She's had the dog. It was her body. She didn't have anything else. It was just her and her body. But she said to me, I realize that now that I am in a wheelchair, I cannot provide the amount of exercise and stimulation that this animal needs and to be happy, basically. So I have made this decision that, this will be the last year that you'll see me in the clinic, because I am going to, adopt my dog out to someone else. And that made a huge impression of me at that point, because for one, I was very impressed and I had immense respect for that incredible decision that she had to make. But also that she respected and loved her animal that much that she was putting her own feelings aside for what was right, right? I mean, that's an interesting question. Would it be traumatizing for the dog? We can't ask the dog that. We know that obviously he's been with that lady for the last 4.5 years of its life. But we also know that border collies, they they have a certain lifespan, and he still has a lot of a lot of years ahead of him, right? So would the dog be happy initially? No, probably not, because, well, you know. But would it be better for its mental and physical health in the long run? Absolutely yes. Yeah, I mean, we have a strong bond with our pets, right? And that's also why this story is, for a lot of people that I tell this story to, it evokes an emotional response. But what I'm trying to illustrate here is that, can we stop people from owning pets if we deem them like not able to take care of the basic needs of the animal? Probably not. But are there situations where that is reality? Absolutely yes. And I would hope that owners, just like this lady, I have so much respect for her, that owners do the research and think about it and like come to a conclusion based on what is right for the welfare of the animal and not just their own welfare. And that can be incredibly difficult. I mean, we all know everything is becoming more expensive. That includes pets as well. And I guess it ties into the idea of should pets be a right or a privilege? But yeah, so that is basically what was going through my head when I saw Sky's question and thinking about it. Obviously, we're talking about ethics today, so we can talk about it. But actually enforcing legislation based on those ideas is really difficult. And in some cases even impossible, I think. In the end, it comes down to the owner, right? And I can spend hours talking about um, people who have 20 cats in like a little flat, or any other scenario that you can come up with that is not necessarily the best for the animal's welfare. But let's not deviate too far into that topic, because I feel like that's also pretty dark. We can get pretty dark from there. But we can go and talk about more questions. And the next one is also two questions that I lumped together into one topic. And both questions are from Passion. Let me see, where are they here? So his first question was, are there ways to protect animals from negative human behavior or human ignorance? And the other one was, should we place accountability over the animal's welfare on the entity that sells the animal? And I sort of lumped those questions together in the topic, who should be accountable? And then I made this topic and I looked at it on my notes and I was like, help. Help, because this is that's such a difficult question. Who should be accountable? You would think it's easy, right? You would think, oh, owners should be accountable. Okay, sure. But then how do we like think about that? Because if you're the owner and you bought an animal, turns out the animal has a genetic disorder. Should you as the owner then be accountable for that? You can do genetic testing as an owner, right? So who is then the breeder? Maybe. And this is something we talked about in school as well. Because like as a veterinarian, right, you're doing everything you can to make an animal better. That's your that's basically your primary job. But we can't do anything without the owner's consent, and that's because the owner is responsible for the animal and we are not. So if something were to happen, it's always the owner's responsibility to help the animal out. And in the Netherlands, we have actually passed legislation on breeders for certain types of dogs that have genetic disorders. So, for example, pugs that can't breathe, so the ones with really flat faces. And if your nose is a certain length, you cannot breed the pug. That's accountability placed on the breeder, right? They have to do the research, get the certificate, and then they can breed it. Same thing for dogs that can only give birth through C-section. It's technically not allowed. Yeah, exactly. So the seller or breeder should be responsible for the animal up until it goes to a new owner. That basically makes the breeder the owner, right? Because they own the animal until they sell it and then it goes to another owner. So, but the genetics, then it's the breeder's problem. What if the breeder also didn't know about it? It's possible, right? Do we want to genetically test every animal that we breed? What if I am a bird owner and I have two female birds, but oh no, I was wrong. One of them is male now. I have babies and they have a genetic disorder. So these are like the variables that you deal with when you talk about who is accountable. Yes, definitely. That you're right, Nim, that happens. And it gets even more complicated when like in Europe we have open borders. And if the Netherlands has different animal law than, for example, Spain, so in the Netherlands you can't breed those dogs with genetic problems, but in Spain you can. I don't know if that's true. It's probably not true. This is just an example. Then you couldn't just go to Spain, buy a puppy, and bring it to the Netherlands. Right? So even when you're making law to hold people accountable, it can become tricky. I'll give you another one, actually. I'll give you another one, which is something I did a welfare paper on. What if um, there's a person who has a cat, and the person, unfortunately, is diagnosed with dementia and accidentally overfeeds the cat because they forget that they have already fed the cat? Are they then accountable for that? They're the owner. What do you think? I mean, yeah, obviously it's not law, but accountability is not just being punishable by law, right? I don't agree with overfeeding your cats for the record. It's especially for cats as a species, it's incredibly dangerous and their lifespans are shortened by a lot. Fat cats are not cute. Let's break this idea. But yeah, I mean, I wasn't gonna say, forget to feed the cat entirely so it starves, because I feel like that's pretty dark, but you know what I mean. And during my welfare paper, right, um, we also talked about what if someone goes to a care home and they have a pet and they bring it with them. Is then the staff of the care home responsible for that animal and should be held accountable? But they don't have training. Neither did they ask for that pet to be brought with them, right? They have training to take care of elderly, not pets. So is the elderly person then still accountable? Yeah, of course, Dim. Like, making the actual rules will be incredibly difficult, if not impossible. But we can still talk about it and form an opinion, right? So, something that seems clear cut at first, as in should be accountable for the animal's welfare, in some cases might not be as clear cut. Their pet license away. Ah, yes. I'm in favor of a pet license, but again, yeah, that is very complicated in and of itself. Maybe we can devote a stream to that at some point. We'll see. Mhm. Mhm. Anyway, I think we can continue. So we have two questions here. Let's see. And they're about the animal's perspective. Um, I think yes, because I think pets would be less of an impulse buy. If you first had to get a license for that specific species, then you would have to do the work before you could get a pet. You couldn't just walk into a pet store and say, oh, the budgie's only $10, let's just buy it. And then not realize that budgies live for 15 years and are a huge commitment. Right? So there's less impulse buying, which I think would mean less pets. But I also think that there would be more illegal pet ownership. That's always, if you make a law, there's always people going to try and get out of the law. Which in turn may lead to those pets not receiving proper veterinary care. You know, it's stuff you have to consider. The overfeeding stuff, yeah. You know, yes, it would happen less. Why? Because unfortunately, a lot of people that own animals lack basic knowledge about their animal. People who own horses, I'm not like my master's was companion animals, not horses, but the numbers on horses, which I happen to know, is that over 50% of horse owners don't even know the natural lifespan of their animal. Over 40% cannot recognize front leg lameness. Those are basic information, and a horse is not an impulse buy either. That's a huge commitment, right? So I can only speculate on the numbers when it comes to companion animals, but I think you would be surprised. I think you would be appalled, maybe even. I posted a while ago now. I posted the lifespans of pet birds on Twitter. Back when I was still on Twitter, I'm now on Blue Sky. But I posted the lifespans of the pet birds there because I saw so many people online who had the pet already. This is important. They already owned the pet. It was already in their house. Not knowing how long these birds live. Not realizing what a commitment it is to take care of them. And while pet stores are still selling full seed diets as a complete bird diet, while we as veterinarians know that it will significantly shorten the lifespan of your animal, right? Access to the right information is complicated. It takes research, it takes effort. And even then, maybe you could still stumble upon information that's just simply false. So, yes, I think that if we were to implement a license, like just disregarding whether that's even possible, there would be less impulse buying, but there also would be more knowledge. Right? Yeah, exactly. Like, for the neglect, sometimes it's not even malicious. Like, obviously, if you as a veterinarian report someone for neglect and the animal's not taken away because it's not that bad, they might reconsider going to a veterinarian at all, which is a huge problem. Which is, I mean, animals have a right to veterinary care. But another issue is, what if the owner is not willingly neglecting their animal? And I've seen this more than you think. I saw it multiple times a week when I was working in the clinic. Pets that were neglected in some way, oftentimes not illegal, some small way, because the owner just didn't know any better. And it wasn't malicious. They were trying to do the best they could for their animal, and they loved their animal, but they just didn't have the knowledge. right? And obviously, hopefully, that would go down. It breaks my heart too when I see people online desperately looking for information and just going on some kind of forum or whatever. There's forums for almost every breed, and just saying like, my pet is sick or my pet has this, and I looked online and I get something else on every website and I don't know what to do. Please help me. Where can I find the information? Stuff like that, because it does happen. And people who still think that you can go to a pet store and get good information. I mean, some pet stores, sure. Most pet stores, probably not. So yeah, it's a huge problem. We can, I think, if you guys don't have any more questions, I mean, if you do, please go for it. If you don't have any more questions, then we can move on to the next one. Alright, so animals' perspective, right? Because everything we talked about so far has been mostly perspective of the human, the owner. So Passion asks two questions that we can file under this topic. First of all, can animals befriend us, and how do we define a human, non-human friendship? And the second one was, is it all defendable to own pets from the animal's perspective? Because we cannot really ask animals if they want to be kept. So let's break it down, right? Can animals befriend us? How do we know? Because this is usually initial thought for most people would be yes. Yes, of course they can. Like my dog, my guinea pig, my bird, they're social. I am friends with my pet. They come running, they are happy to see me. Right, that would be the initial thought for most people. Um, exactly, exactly. That was my point. What makes a friend a friend? Like, how do we define friendship? If an animal comes running because they're happy to see you, are they happy to see you because you're there? Or are they happy because they know that you feed them? Are they happy because they know that you play with them? Is it just instinct because they're social creatures and they live in groups in nature, so they consider you part of the group? When do we define something as true friendship, right? And then suddenly the question becomes a whole lot more difficult. So, me too. I form an emotional response. I own two cockatiels. I would say yes. Yes, they can befriend you. They act differently when I'm sad. They greet me when I come home. They come over to me and ask for pets. They sleep on my shoulder. But those are all behaviors, right? Does Miss think of me as a friend? How would I know? I can't ask her. Maybe she thinks I'm family. You know? Can't ask her that either. So, I think the only truthful answer to the question, can animals befriend us, is we don't know. We don't know. We might not ever know. Actually, fun fact that I can mention here is when humans look at puppies, their brains make certain chemicals and hormones. Oh, cute, right? When animals look at you, when certain animals look at humans, mainly elephants, when elephants look at humans, their brains produce the same chemicals. So scientifically speaking, elephants think we're cute. We're cute tiny creatures. I thought that was really fun. But yeah, how do we define a friendship? Is it chemically? We have defined love chemically. We know which hormones, people have circulating in their blood when they're in love. We can even, in theory, replicate the feeling of love by giving people those hormones. So, but isn't there also an emotional component to friendship? I would say so. But then, do like certain species of animals have that emotional center in the brain developed to a point where friendship can actually be defined as such, right? If I have my fly Boris from the beginning of the stream here, can he befriend me? And if no, how is that different from a guinea pig? And if yes, like, how do we define friendship in that regard? So we don't know. The question, the only possible answer we have right now is from an emotional perspective, we don't know. So then, Passion's second question being, is it defendable to own a pet from the animal's perspective if you can't ask them if they want to be kept? It's sort of sort of builds on that idea, right? Yeah. I mean, you're right. Trust is something that we can. I mean, I don't know if we can scientifically measure it, but we can get a good idea about it from behavior, right? Hmm. So, Passion is right in regards that we cannot ask animals if they're happy or if they want to be kept in the home, right? I can't ask Mist, hey Mist, you're happy living here? Cece doesn't answer. Wait, that does not work. So the only thing we can go off of is their behavior. But then again, is that objective? If Mist is behaving in a way that I would consider positive, right? Happy behavior, she's feeling good. Does that matter if she doesn't know what it's like to not live here? Like, all she's ever known is living here. So, in a way, it would make sense that she's happy to live here, right? Because she doesn't know any better. So, then is that behavior that we are observing an objective measure? Set it free and see if it wants to come back. I would say, I mean, maybe. But then you're gonna think about, does the animal know how to come back? Aren't they scared? Do they want to explore and then come back later and forget where their home is? Right? Do they even have the cognitive ability to realize that you're setting them free and not abandoning them? Yeah, they never gave consent to being a pet, but they have never known anything else. Exactly. So obviously it's different if we're talking about wild caught pets, which I'm not a fan of in general. Um, but say you take an animal out of wild and then you keep it as a pet, right? Then it's a very difficult comparison to an animal that has been a pet its whole life. It's interesting, right? Because when, for example, there is a news article about animals, right? They usually define an animal that's not usually kept as a pet as a captive animal, and it always makes me, yeah, feel a bit uneasy. Because in general, it is objectively true. But we don't think of our pets as being captive, right? At least I in general do not. So, circling back to Passion's question, as in like the animal's perspective, it's just impossible to answer because we don't really know. And I would argue by extension, most of the animals don't really know either. And the interesting thing is, a lot of people will say wild is always best, right? Nature is best. Animal nature is the happiest. But is an animal that's being chased around, like for example a bunny, right? Bunnies don't really have a high survival rate in nature. Bunnies in captivity do. Really high. They become older. They're never cold. They always have food. They always have clean water. Yeah, I mean a bunny or a guinea pig that is or a mouse or a rat, though I think mice and rats might come by on sheer intelligence alone, but especially bunnies and guinea pigs, they, if you release them in the wild, that's not going to end well for them in general. So when I was talking to one of my friends during this week, it actually came up that if the answer to the question in the title of the stream is no, right? Is keeping pets ethical? If the answer is no, then we still couldn't set our pets free because obviously that would be even less ethical. It's difficult because an animal being kept as a pet, there is obviously negatives to it, right? It's not difficult to imagine the negatives, but there are also a huge amount of positives for the animal and the human. Let's be honest. Does that matter if they can't consent? Does that matter? Or. And I think that is a very personal question. I think everybody has a different idea about it. It might even differ between species of animals. And even the question, can we provide adequate care for a certain species of animal, is not as straightforward as you think. Y- Mm. Ethics are very difficult, but they're also, I mean, personally, I really enjoy thinking about it. I think, obviously, not every day, because they're heavy topics, but thinking about ethics in general makes you a better person because it teaches you to evaluate your own standpoints and your own conclusions. No matter the outcome or the conclusion that you draw, I think in general the ability to think about ethics and actually doing it makes you a better person. I have another question. Yeah, we're not done yet. This one is from Passion as well. And he is asking, by keeping animals, we're changing their biology. How does science look at this? How do veterinarians look at this? And what's the ethical considerations of other fields? Massive question. Passion is very good at asking massive questions. So, point one. What does he mean with changing their biology? I mean, look at the picture on the screen. Do you think that bunnies, dogs, cats look like that in nature? No. Or at least very, very, very highly unlikely. So, with changing their biology, in general, when people say that, they mean genetic changing, selective breeding, stuff like that. Which is obviously most prevalent in species of animals that are kept as pets the most. So cats, dogs, bunnies as well, horses. And in general, those genetic changes are for the gain of the human, right? Not the gain of the animal. In some cases, maybe. We might change the genetic makeup of an animal in favor for the animal's welfare. But in most cases, it's for the human because we like the way it looks, for example. Or we want the dog to be bigger or smaller. Oh, thank you for the follow. Mm-hmm. Mm-mm-mm. So yeah, I mean, how does science look at this? Obviously, it's science that allows us to make these changes, apart from selective breeding, right? Because selective breeding is something we have done far before we understood the exact genetics. Um, but science has been a huge help. And the ethical considerations of that. Now we're getting back into the ethics for a little bit. Um, so I already talked about how breeding certain short-nosed dogs in the Netherlands is not allowed anymore, right? Because of the excessive biologic changes to the breed, they were having such health defects that it was deemed unethical. And there was legislation made in response to that. Then that obviously begs the question, how far is too far? Because if there's a Dutch website, I know I stream in English, but I am Dutch, so I also frequent Dutch websites. There's a Dutch website by an animal activist group that lists all genetic problems present in certain dog breeds. Because when we talk about genetic problems or inbreeding or selective breeding that causes genetic problems, physical problems, symptoms, we usually talk about things that are very visible. But some of the most popular dog breeds, like Labradors and stuff, have some of the most severe genetic problems that might not be as visible on the outside, but can still be a huge impact on the welfare of the animal. And this is more well known now than it was, for example, 50 years ago, right? We're as people, it's more well known now. They actually have a bunch of problems. I can actually go to the website right now and I can tell you where they presently rank on this list. Um, let's see. So yeah, they have about 100 breeds here. And we want to sort by dogs that have the most problems, right? So I'm sorting right now. And their third Labradors on this list, with 63 different genetic conditions that are present in the breed. So yeah, when we talk about problems in breeds, we usually talk about the things that you can see, but there, as a veterinarian, I know there's way more. And the fact that these like problems are on this list doesn't mean they all have it, right, Nim? It means that they're just more prevalent in this breed than in the general population. I mean, they could have up to 63, obviously. They could have all of them, but the chances of that are very low. I mean, this website is great because it also breaks down for every single problem how likely they are to get it. If there is DNA testing available, how bad it is for the welfare. Stuff like that. But yeah, just to illustrate that this is a major concern. And luckily there's a lot of breeds that have, you know, the group of people, the clubs, the breeder clubs that actually do genetic testing for the most common genetic problems, and they will breed accordingly. So they will try to not breed animals that have those defects in their genes. So eventually, hopefully, the breed might be healthy. But we're not done yet. We're far from done. It's huge. So when we talk about ethics in that regard, knowing what we know, how can we ethically breed pets? And we need to breed the pets if we want to keep them, right? Because catching them in the wild, what you can do for birds, for example, that is not good. That is very bad. That is considered even worse ethically. And in often cases, often illegal as well. So yeah, we have to find a solution. At this point, the general public and the general consensus, I would argue, is that it's not okay to breed an animal for something that a human wants if it causes them a decrease in welfare. But in some cases, it's sort of accepted. And I have beef with Labradors in general. I'm sorry, Labradors, it's not your fault. But there is this genetic problem that they have. Not all of them, but a lot of them, where they don't feel satiated after eating, so they're always hungry. You know how it's sort of a meme and it's a joke that Labradors are always hungry and always eat everything? Yeah, because a lot of them always are. And to me, like, you can't see that, but to me that's a huge impact on welfare. Imagine always starving. And if you find this interesting, you can actually look up both the genetic mutation in the dogs and in humans. We have something that's similar. In humans, it's a bit more severe, but it's called Prader-Willi syndrome, which you can read up on. It's pretty well known at this point. There's Wikipedia pages for it. But this is something that they have, and a lot of people don't see it as an issue. I see it as an issue, but that's my personal opinion. I don't think it's okay. So how would you defend that ethically, right? Another thing we can mention in under this topic is it used to be the case that when people said you had a like a pure breed, it was sick. You had a mixed breed, it was healthy. I'm sure you've heard this somewhere. It's no longer true because a lot of pure breed clubs are trying to make their dogs as healthy as possible, and having a mixed breed does not mean that it does not have the genetic problems that might be prevalent in the breeds that is in the mix. So just do your research, please. Don't just buy a puppy because they're cute off of like in the internet. Anything I would suggest, I mean, for example, for the Labradors, we know which genetic um, defect is the cause, right? So in theory, if we screen every Labrador that we breed for this problem, we can eventually make sure it no longer exists. Only breed the healthy ones. But genetic testing is expensive. Um, there's a lot of people who breed their dogs while they're not official breeders, just because they want to breed their dogs one time. And if a lot of the population has it, and we need to keep the population purebred, if that is what we're looking for, then you have other problems, because then you're going to make inbreeding even more prevalent. If you exclude 80% of the population from breeding programs, then you're left with only 20% of the gene pool. So I honestly don't know. It's difficult. If it is something that is that impactful to the welfare, then I would say it's worth it. Do the testing, you know, get it out of the population. But it depends on if it's possible. Some breeds might not have that much genetic diversity already. So then in that case, you're only going to make it worse in trying to eliminate this one affliction, right? So you should ask a geneticist, a genetics, what is the English word for someone who specializes in genetics? Wait, genet. Oh, it is geneticist. Okay, a geneticist. Yes, we should ask them. They are way more capable to answer that question than I am. Mm. But when we consider pet ownership, then this is one of the points that might come up, right? Are we making the animals sicker just by keeping them as pets? And I think it's sort of, we don't have to, right? We have the tools and the knowledge to not do that. And right now, I think we're at the start of undoing maybe decades of problems that have arisen from specific breeding. I think it's this for this topic at least, it's going in the right direction, which is very positive. But then, you know, for bunnies and horses, it's actually going in the wrong direction. So, but for dogs and cats, there's way more awareness, and it's going in the right direction. For birds, it's also starting to happen. Like Mist, she is a true white-faced Xeno, so she is white with red eyes. There is no such thing as albinism in birds because they don't have the gene, but you could call her albino. We know, and I learned this later. It's so dumb because like I did 3 months of research, and in those 3 months, this hadn't come up once. But it turns out that for cockatiels specifically, that specific morph, so the white one with red eyes, is known to have night blindness, and that is linked to their color. So for birds, we're now starting to see problems. And I really hope that we as a society have progressed to a point where we're going to catch this early. So we don't get the deep-rooted problems that might arise from specific breeding. But then again, I also know how much money can be made from bird shows and like getting a special one, that I'm worried. I'm worried. So I don't know what your perspective is on that, but obviously everybody's going to have a different idea. I mean, I might be quite extreme in the fact that I don't think it should be possible to make money off an animal ever, which includes animal sports. Because I think the moment you introduce money into the equation, the animal comes second for a lot of people. And I think that's a bad dynamic. So yeah. We have gone through all the questions that I had and a lot of different aspects of ethics. So is there anything else that you guys want to ask, talk about? Honestly, that's why it might be like, that's why my opinion might be a bit extreme. I still don't think it's justifiable. There's always another way to make money. And involving an animal, in my opinion, will never end well. So even if that's your only way to make money at this point, I still don't think it's ethically justifiable. I don't think so. I think as an owner, you are responsible, and anything to do with your pet or animal should be your main priority. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not against working animals. I'm not against working dogs. I'm not against working horses, because all a lot of them really enjoy it, right? I'm against when money becomes involved. So when there's competitions that you can win prize money for, when breeding a specific type of fish will be able, then you are able to sell it for a lot more money. Like we can talk about goldfish and how some of them have certain characteristics that are just so bad for their welfare. And nobody talks about it because they're fish. Hey Clavo, I hope you're doing well today. Because I think whenever the money is involved, then it's just the money is eventually going to come first. Like I don't even mind competitions as long as it's in good fun. And honestly, the way I back that opinion would also be some human psychology. That in a way we can't help it to always want more and always want like power and stuff like that because we're sort of biologically built in that way. But that's a whole different topic that I don't really want to get into. Farm animals that are used on fields. I mean, let's keep that maybe for another time because we're talking about pets specifically. But I mainly mean animals where it has gone too far. Where the money has become more important than the welfare for the animal, either whether that is a conscious decision or a subconscious like, thing that happens. Because if a dog owner tells me my dogs love to go to shows, then I'm not gonna question them on that. Right? They know their dogs better than I do. I only see them in the clinic. She's probably right. But when an owner tells me, and I've seen this happen, I want to breed this specific dog with this dog in Switzerland because of their specific characteristics. So I can sell the puppies for more money because they're both show-winning dogs. Then I start to have an issue. Personally, this is my opinion, right? I start to have an issue. Because then you're not thinking about the welfare of the animal in the first place. Yes, exactly. I've seen this happen in the clinic. I've seen people come in. There was this one couple that had a show-winning dog, and she had puppies, or at least she had been pregnant before, but she lost the puppies because her pregnancy went really bad, and she almost died. But they still wanted to breed her again because she's valuable. I have seen when I was a child, I was cycling to school, and I came past this farm each day for I think 3 years, 3 years, 4 years, and they had a horse there. They had a single horse. They never did anything with the horse. Was always on the field. Never saw anyone with him. And each year that horse had a foal. And that was the only time in the year that I saw that horse being happy. When it had a foal. And then after a couple months the foal was gone. Because they sold it. They bred the horse each year. And each year they sold the foal. And each year the horse was just like after the baby was taken away, it was just standing at the fence line alone. They're herd animals. It broke my heart. Like she didn't have a or well it had to be a she. She didn't have a friend. She was just standing in the field all day. Then I take issue. You understand where the line is? Yeah, Glavo, we actually just talked about that whole like the breeding with like pretty and stuff. So I don't take issue with working animals at all. I take issue when if there is money involved, especially a lot of money. When it becomes an industry, then yeah, no. But then you could argue, like, from an ethical standpoint, sure, we can say that I don't ethically agree with that. But then is it still keeping pets? Because then it's, you know, a side hustle. Yeah. Yeah, the noses. It's even worse when you realize horses can't actually breathe through their mouths. The reason they have such big noses, such big holes in their noses, is because that's where they take in all of their air. So that horse is specifically bred for appearance, not for uh, well, performance. But you can argue where the line is, right? What if, for example, I have a dog, right? Just an example. What if I have a dog and I have to groom that dog every day? Or else the hair becomes entangled and it will eventually like form knots and become a problem. Is that too far? Is that too far for breeding to make the human happy? Because the animal doesn't care about having that much hair. Or is that still defendable? Then what if I sell that animal to someone and they don't brush the animal daily? Turns out the animal gets knots in their hair that pull on the skin and cause pain. Then who is at fault? Like, it's really difficult to put the line somewhere. I think everybody is sort of, their brains are sort of starting to shut down, mine included. I mean, it's a heavy topic, right? I've tried to not make it dark or anything, because I know it can be. It is definitely a heavy topic. I'll take that as a compliment, Nim. Well, anyway, I'm out of questions for now. There was one more topic about what if we keep wild animals in the home and the ethics about that, but I would rather tackle that during another stream that is more suited to that, because I don't consider, like, that's why at the start of the stream I like sort of gave my definition of what a pet is, because that, let's keep it on that topic. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Animals have certain needs, but in some cases, the cause of having that need was a human who decided to breed them in some way or whatever. It's not the animal's fault, right? It always comes down to that. It always comes down to it's not the animal's fault. The animal didn't ask for this. We can't ask the animal what's right or wrong. Be a good owner, take responsibility, make sure you have the means, and do the research. That's what it comes down to in general. And there is no clear-cut roadmap for right, wrong in ethics. So do any of you have any other questions to ask, topics to tackle, points to make, ideas to throw into the group? Nope. I mean, you don't have to. I'm just giving the opportunity, because otherwise I'm going to find a raid soon. Yeah, go for it. Hmm. Um. Well, the general consensus is that animals cannot be responsible for their own welfare as long as they're in captivity. So if your horse decides to jump into a lake and then can't get out, which happens surprisingly often, then that is not your fault, but it's also not really the animal's fault. So then there's just nobody who is held accountable. And your question about are there evil animals? There's individual differences in personality between animals. 100%. Everybody who has a pet knows this. Um, can they be inherently evil? I don't know, but I can give you at least some information to start. We know from research that dogs can have OCD. We are pretty sure that they can have ADHD. We're also decently positive that they can have autism. It's really hard to figure out if an animal can have a mental disorder, which is why it's something that is not really well researched, not really well documented. There's some documentations over parrots who stopped eating after their owner died, described as depression. There is proof that dolphins, which I know they're not pets, but basically, to you know, use a euphemism, stopped living out of their own free will. So there's definitely something to say for mental illness, mental well-being in pets. Asking, are there evil animals? I have no idea. Can an animal be a psychopath or a sociopath? I don't know, but I don't see why not. I would not discard the possibility. But yeah, we can't ask them. Yeah, I mean, obviously there's evidence that animals care. They have that they're social, they have feelings, they have their own personalities, they have their own lives. To what extent we can't know, we can't ask them. But in general, there is no evidence to suggest animals cannot have mental disorders just like humans can, including depression, including ADHD, autism, OCD. There's no evidence to suggest they cannot have that. There's very little evidence to suggest they can, because it's just so hard to test. But if we're talking about inherently evil animals, maybe. It's not impossible. But you can't really give a cat a psychopath test, you know? That's not gonna work. So it's kind of difficult. You'd have to go by behavior, and that's always subjective. Plus, it would probably be pretty rare. So, I mean, cats are just inherently not social animals. They don't live in social groups, or at least their wild counterpart that they are derived from does not live in social groups. Of course, we have the whole discussion about cats keeping their kitten brain in order to be able to live together with other animals. And, you know, I could have a whole stream just talking about cats and all the misconceptions about cats. It would probably be, I would probably get a lot of people that would not like that stream very much. But I would base it all on fact. It's okay, birdies. Are you hungry? They're watching me. Yeah, I got it. Don't worry, I know you meant cats. Anyway, there's an ad break coming again. That's no problem. Does that sort of answer your question, Nim? Or did you want to take it in a different direction? Always. I mean, that's... I warned you guys at the start of the stream, there's a whole bunch of topics that fall under the ethics of pets. We're not going to get in on all of them, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Alright then. Is there anything else any of you wanted to ask or talk about? Or tell us? Maybe you have your own stories? I mean, that's not a bad thing, that we were pretty thorough. Alright. Then I think I'm going to find a raid. The VOD should be up. I will also upload this to YouTube if you're interested in ever listening to it again. I hope you guys had fun. I hope you guys learned something. That would be great. And I hope to do this again. Well, obviously next week we don't, because I'm trying to do this bi-weekly. So Monday won't be anything. And then the Monday after that, we will have a new topic. Alright, let's see who's streaming. I think that means every 2 weeks. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean every 2 weeks. Let me Google it then, or else we can't sleep. Bam, 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 bam. Yes, every 2 weeks. Oh, it's both. It can be appearing every 2 weeks, or happening or appearing twice a week. Really? It's both? Huh. Every 2 weeks or twice a week. That is so confusing. English explain. Oh no. And the definition example is that her doctor told her to get checkups bi-weekly. No, that's such a bad example. Please don't use that example. Okay. Well, that's another topic, I guess. Yeah, I guess so. So what do you guys want to watch? I know this was quite of a heavy topic. We have Anko is streaming something chill. Though we do rate her a lot. And Xen is streaming Marvel Rifles, and I'm pretty sure his stream is also 18 plus. Or else I would have to find someone. Any preference? No preference. We can raid Sen then, since we haven't raided him in a while. Who knows, maybe one day I'll get a raid of my own. Xen usually streams in French, but he also speaks English, so feel free to address him in English. Be nice to him, please. Thank you for watching. Hope you all had a good time. And I'll see you next week, probably for some gaming. Take care, okay? Let me know if you like this format too. In the Discord if you want to. And we'll see. Bye guys!